Hi everyone, and welcome to this Vervoe webinar. It's just past 8 a.m. here in Melbourne, Australia. Should be about 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 3 p.m. Pacific. Where are you joining us from today? Let us know in the comments as we wait for a couple more people to join. I'd love to know. Will Wang is with me this morning. Good morning, Will.
Hey Dom, great to be here.
You got a great
Pretty
setup
early.
there with the surfboards and the egg cartons in the background. I really appreciate it. Is this a
Thanks, mate.
studio you've constructed just for this webinar, or?
Yeah, of course, right? Just for this very webinar itself. Yeah, it's my little recording studio, I should say. Not our usual office, but yeah, just a cool little space we've got. Thinking about putting a couple of couches in here, some lighting, all that kind of cool stuff. But
You got
yeah,
to get the neon lights going, I guess, and you can become a bit of
that's it.
a webinar, guest and a Twitch streamer or something like that.
No, I can't touch games. I've got an addictive personality. If I get too competitive, so I stay away from that.
That sounds wise. Yeah, that sounds fair. James Jacobson joining us from Hawaii. Hi, James. Thanks.
Dang,
Wow.
from
What's
where
good?
I'd rather be.
Yeah, honestly, it looks like Will's joining us from a studio in Hawaii today, so that's great. We'll wait just a couple more minutes. And hey, what did everyone have for breakfast, or what's everyone looking forward for dinner today? What do you have, Will?
I intermittent fast, so I don't have breakfast normally. Black coffee with some lion's mane mushroom is my breakfast.
I can get on board with the black coffee. The mushroom, I don't know, but fasting. Good Lord, how do you do that? We should do a whole webinar on that.
Nope, it's literally donate. Dude.
Yeah, it'll be a quick one. All right, who we got here? All right, well, I think we're just going to get started. So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Vervoe webinar. Today, we're exploring the world of VAs, or virtual assistants. It's a fast-growing market of online workers who can help with everything from SEO and social media to bookkeeping and customer support. In this session, we'll be looking at the challenges involved with hiring VAs, namely how to guarantee their competence at the tasks that they're claiming to be able to do. And joining me to discuss this, as you've met already, is Will Wang. So Will is the founder and head of growth at Growth Labz, a marketing agency that specializes in helping B2B companies get qualified leads and dream clients. And he also runs a business that trains and matches VAs with clients. And he's found a unique way to rank virtual assistants based on their skills. Will, welcome.
Thanks, Tom. What an intro. Thank you very much.
Your whole career just squeezed into a couple of paragraphs. Look, it's a really interesting topic that we're covering today, and it's not one that I was like fully around before we kind of found it and found you. So I'd love to know, and I'd love for you to kind of explain from your perspective, what are VAs? What are they to you, and when did this all come about?
Yeah, it's a term that's thrown around for quite a bit, but obviously everyone's got different definitions and meanings. But for me, essentially what it means, it's just another team member of ours who happens to be based offshore. There's so many different takes on it, but literally every single VA or virtual assistant that we place into our team, while we call them, generally you call them VAs, they've all got their own specialties, they've all got their own functions, and we literally treat them all like employees, like full-time employees with leave. So when I say VA, I just mean a team member that's not local to us here in Australia, that happens to be based in the Philippines.
Right. Yeah, because I think I used to think when I heard the term VAs or virtual assistants of like Siri or Google Assistant, or, so this was kind of a whole new sort of term and a definition of it. What can VAs be hired to do? I mentioned a couple that I found in there, which, is generally what you'd get kind of like a freelancer or someone on something like Upwork to do, a bit of copywriting, a bit of SEO stuff. But, I'm sure that it sounds like there's such a broad range of things that you can hire them to do, especially when you consider the fact that they're really just a offshore team member.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a wide range. So, for example, in my team, we've got about 15 VAs, let's just call them, employees or team members offshore. We've They do things like graphics design. I've got an amazing graphics designer based in the Philippines. We do web development as well. So if we need to build websites or web pages or funnels, for example, I've got an amazing team member who does WordPress development and design based over there. I've got also a team who look at data and look at data analysis, who looks at personalization, because we do cold emailing for some of our clients. So we heavily personalize every single email that goes out. So I've got a full team that does that. And then I've got virtual assistants that help me run my life. So one that sits on my calendar, one that sits on my emails to help me filter out emails, and other people that just support the business. So there's so many different roles and tasks. Literally, what I look at is, well, is this a role that we can, that we need to hire someone for? And if it is, do we go offshore or do we stick locally? Because there is a bit of a knowledge gap, but that's getting much, much smaller as we go. So literally for us, it's like, well, what do we need as a task and as a functionality? And we build that out, and then we hire from overseas to fill that if we need to.
Yeah, right. So a couple of interesting things there. I guess the first one that's at the top of my head is like, they're a team member. You're treating them. You said you hire them for some personal things as well. Like, I'm assuming you can actually treat them like an assistant and get them to run your calendar or get them to go through your emails. Can you get them to pick up your dry cleaning, or have we not, as technology, not caught up with that yet?
That unfortunately not. I think that is still very much within the realm of a local executive assistant who does all of that. But then, hey, I mean, if you're paying someone $100,000 a year to get your dry cleaning, well, why not, right?
Yeah, fair enough. And they're part of your team, you keep saying. Yeah, can you explain exactly how that manifests itself? Because for a client, and for you, you seem to be a client as well of VAs. How is it different from just kind of hiring a freelancer or hiring someone off of Upwork or something like that, that you're really just hiring for one specific job for one day or what for a short period of time? Is there anything unique in that makes them more a part of the team than one of those?
Yeah, so I mean, we use freelancers and contractors from time to time as well, but generally, if it's a role that I know is going to be long term with us, I do prefer to have them as an employee, because it means that we can train them. It means that they get used to the way that we want to do things. We do, we do premium level work. So for that, there's a very high level of standards. And sometimes you just don't get that if you use freelancers, for example, or contractors, just because they just don't really know, first of all, the standard we've got, and secondly, the approach that we want to take. So for me to build the business that we do and serve the clients that we serve, it also means that we need to have a high standard across every single person who comes in and does the work with us. So therefore, for me, well, I just figure it's easier to have them on a full-time basis. So they do 40 hours a week with us. They get leave, they get personal leave, they get paid holiday leave, they get public holidays off. We have a training program inside. We have paths for career progression. We treat them exactly the same as we would for our local employees. So that's what I mean by there's not much difference between our local team and our offshore team. It's just that they're based somewhere else in the world. That's all.
Interesting. And so it sounds like it's just more of an investment in that person, in training them up or getting them across sort of what the brand is or how you do things at your particular organization. Yeah, really interesting. So with this whole market of virtual assistants, is this something that came about during the pandemic? Did it exist before? Was it already kind of cooking? And did the pandemic kind of accelerate it? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've been in business for about 6 years now, and from the second year of business, I've always hired VAs, not because it was something that I purposely set out to do, just for the fact that in the first 2 or 3 years of business, we made no profit. So we had to reduce costs, and there were things that I was doing, which I classified now as $10 or $20 an hour activities, right? And as a founder, I knew that for us to grow, I couldn't focus on those $10 things. Like, for example, very early on, it was replying to emails about stuff that's not directly tied to our revenue, right? Like things like that. It's at the beginning, it was looking at who we can do outreach to build partnerships or to get speaking events with. Now, while those activities are important, the act of getting those leads or those contacts isn't actually a high value activity. So at the very beginning, we kind of built out in a way where everything that wasn't worth at least $100 an hour, we tended to offshore just by necessity. The pandemic definitely accelerated some of this, especially with remote working. So I've had a couple of clients that we've placed virtual assistants for, and previously they never would have considered it, right? It just wasn't within their realm of possibility. But because everyone was so remote anyway, they got used to remote working, and they struggled to find staff in certain areas, especially around things like data cleansing or just admin work. And they really struggled to find people who, for lack of a better term, who could sit there for 8 hours a day and crunch data and be happy with it. So they started to come through and hire people in the Philippines who, for them, this is like a life-changing job, right? We pay them well, we treat them really nicely, and just to give you some cultural context, a lot of the people in the Philippines, they'll go away and work on cruise ships for 9 months of the year and not see their kids. Whereas we come in and give them a job that pays them more than that job. They stay at home and they interact with their kids. They watch their kids grow up. And so they're super thankful for a job, and they actually like the work. So we saw that kind of boom during the pandemic, and people realized, well, since I can't hire for it locally anyway, and since my staff locally don't want to do this stuff, and I'm more used to managing remotely, maybe there's potential to go overseas to get some of this work done.
Yeah, really, really interesting. So it's more cost effective from one end, but also if you do it right. I mean, I'm sure there's a world of ethical kind of concerns with some of this stuff, but if you pay them quite well, it's also something positive for the VAs themselves and a sort of lifestyle kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the biggest objection that I get sometimes when talking about this is actually, are we taking jobs away from someone here, or are we mistreating people and taking advantage of them overseas? And I think that is one thing that kind of keeps coming up, especially when you see companies that run ads around this kind of service, and people are just very negative on the ads. And so I think that is kind of something that's really important to address.
Yeah. What's your point of view on that? I mean, you mentioned before, perhaps an executive assistant is getting paid, $100,000 to get up dry cleaning and do many more things, I'm sure. But, is that what you were noticing, and what this was kind of filling was, there's a lack of job satisfaction from local workers to do some of this work, and they're either asking for more than it's worth to the business, or there's just no way to kind of retain them? Like, is that what people were finding?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to this equation. So I look at it from a local employee side, and also from but I'm going to generalize because I know people hire virtual assistants from everywhere. I'm just going to say the Philippines because that's where 80% of our team are. Our virtual team are. So from the side of an employee in Australia, one of the challenges or difficulties we had experienced both for ourselves and for our clients is not having enough work for a full-timer, but having enough work that if we had to outsource it to a freelancer, for example, that'll cost more than a full-timer itself. But that process of not having enough work and then not having to pay more for less work meant that there's not a lot of job security for the people that we could have brought onto the team. So first and foremost, if we were going to hire someone full-time, let's just take, for example, a graphics design role. If we hired a full-time graphics designer, and we were looking at it at one point in time locally, she would have had to do all this other stuff that she didn't really want to do, just because we didn't have enough work to keep her, happily working full-time. So then in that case, we lost opportunity to hire because she was like, look, I like graphics, I like design, but I don't want to do all this other stuff that you're pushing through just to fill my hours. So that was, one of the difficulties they had. That we had, I should say. So from a local's perspective, it's not like we're taking jobs away from local people, because ultimately there's still going to be a massive market for freelancing. If there's still going to be companies who only want to hire locally, and for example, now that our business has grown, we've actually got local designers that we hire full time, and they work with our design team in the Philippines. So it's more of a complementary role. So that's from the local perspective. From the people or the team members we've got based in the Philippines, it was probably one of the most careful things I was very early on, because I didn't want to exploit people. I didn't want it to feel like, hey, we're paying them a lot less than what a local employee would get. How would they feel about that? But really, really quickly, as we started to work with people from the Philippines, we were just hearing very different things. So my staff in the Philippines would actually on team calls say things like, look, you've actually changed my life. So one of my, we haven't lost or haven't had a staff member quit for more than 4 years, and every time I talk to my senior team within the Philippines, they tell me stories like how they were constantly traveling. Again, that story on going on cruise ships, not getting paid anything, and not seeing their kids for 9 months. And then flipping it around, when now they've got a stable job, they're getting paid. My senior team probably paid, if not in the top 1%, in the top 5% of all incomes within the Philippines, right? So they make a really, really good salary. They make a life-changing salary. They've got cars, they've got nannies, they've got all that kind of stuff. And but I'm still getting a lot of good arbitrage from having that team there, that they've got such a good standard of living through employment with us. So rather than being exploitive, they're actually all super thankful and grateful for the job that we've got. Now, obviously, there's a caveat, right? And we've done it in a way that empowers them, that gives them, a strong company culture to work in and to work with. So you've got to establish that. But if you have, a good company, if you treat them like good employees, they're just beyond grateful for the opportunities that we can give them.
Really interesting. And look, it sounds like that's a best case scenario there. I'm sure there's a lot of different kind of versions of, because I'm sure to a lot of people, because it sounds like a sort of middle road between freelancer, part-time or full-time kind of employee. I'm sure to a lot of companies and people that could seem like all right, let's outsource it and save a lot of money. But the best version of that is obviously, it's a significant investment in that person, in giving them something sustainable, and it's actually quite meaningful to them, and they want to be there. So that's great. But I guess with the vast sort of range of jobs that can be filled with VAs, would that be the case for, many of them? And how, I guess, I'd love to know the range, how high skilled of a job is there that's being filled by a VA versus, some of the more kind of entry level things that, are maybe sort of lower skilled or easier to teach. How high does it go?
I mean, I don't think there's a real limit. In speaking from experience, the people based in the Philippines are just hardworking, loyal. They want to learn. They want to grow. They want to improve. So I've seen in a client's business, one of his team members based in the Philippines almost run the business, including dealing with clients, talking to people, getting on the phone, managing a team of 50. I've just seen extraordinary stuff done from someone based in the Philippines, right? So I don't think there's a limit in terms of how high they can go. It's more around how much are you willing to invest in training them and bringing them up to that level.
Well, on that note, let's talk a bit about your business. So tell me a little bit about what it does. I believe it's kind of like sort of finding, it's almost like a talent pool, finding a talent pool of virtual assistants and, helping to train them and match them with the right clients. You explain it to me and explain
Sure.
exactly how this all works.
Yeah, so this is a business that we're just quietly launching. So for the longest time, for the past couple of years, we've always had clients or friends saying, "Hey, your virtual assistant team are amazing. Can you help us find someone like who are on your team?" So it's a new service where we're actually training up a bunch of talented people we've found in our company internally. So we train them on lead generation systems. We train them on Slack, Asana, ClickUp, all the systems, core capabilities they need to do well in a virtual assistant role. And then when we have clients come through to us and say, hey, can you help me find an amazing virtual assistant? We actually take a profile and match it to someone within our team. And so then we place them within our clients or my friends' businesses and give them 3 months of training and support to merge them within their new team. So it's very hands-on. It's literally, we've already filtered through, hundreds, if not thousands of people to find these top cream of the crop people. We've trained them in our business internally. So we know that they can communicate. We know that they are hardworking. They turn up on time. They've got good communication skills. They're open to feedback. And then only after that process do we then place them into other companies to save them the time and hassle of hiring, training, and doing all of that kind of stuff.
Really interesting, because that's obviously probably the hardest and most time-consuming thing, is the investment of time and resources in getting someone who's completely remote up to speed on exactly how you do things or how a particular business does things. That's a lot of documenting. That's a lot of, I don't know, face-to-face time. Like how are you training them up? Is it all stuff that can be async, and how long did that take to set up? Or is it, running sessions, or like, it sounds sprawling, like the amount of things to do that.
So I think we've got to talk about, we'll come back and talk about the hiring process because it kind of starts from there. But in terms of the training, it's taken us years and years to actually develop, because it's actually our internal training mechanism, our internal training SOPs, right? So we start by pushing them through to recorded content. So we've recorded internal training content that we push all of the virtual assistants through. So it goes into things like systems. And then we've got a training session twice a week with my senior team members. And we've actually got one of our senior team members moving into a full-time development role where twice a week she'll actually sit down with people and train them on, here's what to expect culturally from working with an Australian company versus a US company versus company in the UK. Because culturally, that's the biggest challenge, right? Understanding how founders and also people in companies communicate to them, and how they can really work to make sure that they're not ghosting the founders, because sometimes if you give them criticism the wrong way, they freak out and they just leave. So it's really that training about, hey, you don't have to do that, because they're just trying to help you grow. They're just trying to develop you in this role. So twice a week we'll have cultural training. The cultural is maybe not the right term, but they're training on the mentality on how to be a long-term team member and how to communicate and take feedback and grow and develop into the roles within the companies. So it's a mixture of the technical stuff, the technical hands-on systems, and a mixture of the mindset, the mentality, the communication skills, all of that combined, which really helps the people that we find to do well.
What's the biggest communication difference between like Australian and American companies?
I think American companies are a lot more direct, which I kind of like. But when you've got the cultural differences, especially in the Philippines, where it's about saving face and all of that, it can be really hard for them to take any kind of feedback unless they've been trained to be like, hey, it's just feedback to help you grow. So for example, even if you give them feedback, like, this isn't quite the way that I want it to be done. And it's absolutely impossible, right, for someone completely new to come into your business and just nail it the way you want them to do it. But for them, any kind of feedback is like, oh my God, I'm actually getting criticized. I'm not good enough at this. So it's that cultural shift of talking to the founders and getting them to be okay and to encourage failure on the side of the virtual assistant, and then having the virtual assistant understand that failure, especially initially, is a part of the job. They're not expected to jump in and be perfect. So that, for me, as Australians, I think we're a bit of a different breed in terms of we're a little bit more not relaxed, but we tend to joke about things a little bit more. So, we're not quite as direct. So short term, it can be better, but long term, it also means that we're not helping virtual assistants progress or understand as quickly as American companies. But each have their pros and cons. But it's really about working with a team member to understand how you, as a founder or a director, actually works and how you like them to actually communicate. But we're kind of just generalizing, because obviously within each country there's different cases, and each company is actually quite different based on the culture they built. But generally, that's the main differences which I see.
Yeah, interesting. We're going to go through a few more minutes here. So anyone who needs to run off, it's totally fine. We'll send you a recording of this webinar straight after, well, later today. Talk to me about how you've been able to kind of straddle all of this information together into something workable for you and your business that can actually look and rank, I guess, and sort people's competency at doing different tasks to then know, what to either hire them for yourself, or what to, which ones to recommend to a business who need to fulfill a certain task.
Yeah, so I mean, systems like Vervoe, I wish Vervoe was around a couple of years ago when we started this process. We've transitioned all of our hiring across at the moment because what we used to do was we had a set task for every type of role. So, for example, if we had a graphics design role, we'd have a set thing that our graphics designers would have to do, or our new graphic designers have to do. If we had a general virtual assistant role, there's tasks that they'd have to do. And it was a painstaking process having to check emails individually and download things and check through it. And there's no, even we tend to miss things, especially because there's hundreds of applications coming through for particular roles. So we sometimes miss things. We sometimes don't judge things the way they should be judged. And having the lens of having a system that looks at it and ranks it for us is actually super, super helpful. So at the moment, once we get the applications through, we have a process where we automate it to the way that if they want to apply, they have to reply to our job listing with a certain phrase within the subject line. And anyone who replies with that phrase, we push them through to an assessment immediately. So it's a paid assessment that they do immediately. We've got a filter before that. We don't want 1,000 people doing a paid assessment because then it's going to be expensive. But we highlight some who we think have potential. We have let's just say for each job role, we've got opportunity for 20 people to go through and do the assessment. And then Vervoe tells us, hey, after 20, here's who answered the fastest, here's who answered some of these questions. And we're just starting the process with Vervoe. So we're not great at it yet, but we will get to the point where we know how to rank it and use the AI to give us an accurate rank. So that's probably the next step in the process. But just having a system where everything's in one place, we can go through and go, oh, look at what this person did. This was amazing. This is the new benchmark. Has been really, really helpful.
Interesting. And just to go through the kind of way that Vervoe works as well, you can kind of like select different competencies as well, and it'll sort of reorder the ranking based on that as well, which I assume is handy. Yeah, good, great. Just promoting the product a bit there. What's the secret code that people need to know? I'm picturing some sort of like promo code or something, like a secret like thing you find in your cereal box, and if you get it, you can get through to the next round. Like what are we talking? What's that testing? Just that they can read the instructions properly, or?
So generally, there's a few secret Easter eggs that we place throughout. So with a general VA, it could be something like 3/4 of the way through on the job post, I'll put a phrase in there and I say, hey, to reply, to actually get us to read the application, you have to use banana pancakes as your subject line plus this. I don't know why banana. That's what I think it's a Jack Johnson song. One of my favorite songs.
You didn't have breakfast this morning. That's why.
Yeah, that's probably why. Yeah, that's it.
Hungry.
So, but please, everyone who's on this or watch the record, don't use banana. That's my phrase. That's not a secret. There's no secret behind banana pancake. It's literally my favorite song when I was starting the process. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna see like 1,000 job posts. Like, oh, you say banana pancakes.
Comment banana
pancakes. But that's kind of my phrase, and it's so random that they can't come across it by accident. Like they have to have read the job description the whole way through to get to that phrase and purposely use that in the application back to us.
Very, very interesting. Just quickly on Vervoe, and we're going to wrap up very soon. But what was it like to implement that, and what are the next steps of that? Will you be sort of relying on it more and more as you go on?
Yeah, definitely. So we implemented Vervoe initially to hire an in-house copywriter and in-house designer locally. And that was an amazing process. It meant that I could have a very subjective look. So one of the issues that I had, and this is part of my learning as an entrepreneur, as a founder and a business owner, was obviously, there's people out there who interview really, really well. There's people who don't interview so well. And I think for a technical role, like a copywriting role, which is so important to our business, I think I had a couple of misfires. I'm like, this person's awesome during the interview, and then they just don't turn up, or if they show up and they like, oh, I can't be bothered coming to the scrum today. It's like, dude, that's part of your role. So Vervoe really helped us with that part of the process where we could assess on skills before even speaking to someone. So it meant that we were filtering out the duds who would have made it past, or we were finding hidden gems who wouldn't have made it past based on the resumes or based on how they interviewed, but they were actually technically very good. So we implemented that for our local hires. And then from that point, we're like, this is such a good process. We love the ranking of it. We love how systemized it all is. Why don't we use it for our international hires as well? So that's kind of how we've used it so far.
Really interesting. Cool. I think I've said that after every answer, by the way. I'll stop saying that. Really interesting. All right. I'm going to do a final quick round of questions here, and then we'll wrap up. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today, by the way. What are the most popular requests at the moment for that people hire VAs for?
Lead generation. So a big part of what we do is some of our clients like, look, we don't want to pay you ongoing to do this, but can you implement your lead gen system into our business? And so with that, they want to hire a virtual assistant who can run the system as well. So that's probably the main one. Otherwise, we've placed graphics designers for clients. We've placed WordPress developers and web developers and designers. So that's been a pretty big one, or just a general VA who can take, like email off the plate of the founder, or calendar arrangement off the plate of the founder. So those are general design, lead gen, and also tech, probably the most common ones that we've placed.
What's the weirdest task that you've seen people hire VAs for?
I've done some pretty weird stuff with my team early on. That was actually pretty funny. So I've had my VA, or my team of VAs. At that point, I think it was only 3 or 4 people. I had them send a text message to my mum on her birthday from like random people. And my mum was like, who are these people saying happy birthday to me? So that was pretty funny.
As in, like, she was flooded with
happy birthday messages. Yeah. I've used my team to annoy people that annoyed me, funnily enough. So someone who just wouldn't stop spamming me or trying to do, very early on, trying to annoy me by trying to cheat me out. I've had my team members saying, spamming them back, for example. It's just fun, kooky little things that you can probably do, but there's no limit to all of this kind of stuff. I've seen some really weird stuff, but probably not PG enough to share on here. But those are some of the stuff that I've done with my team.
Everyone in the audience, share with us what the weirdest thing you'd get. Keep it PG, but share with us what the quirkiest thing you would do with the VAs is. That's great. I thought for a second there that you used a VA to send your mum your birthday message, the one that should really come from you. But you really saved it there. That's quite funny.
Yeah.
And look, finally, will one day we live in a world, and maybe we do already, you can tell me, where you can hire a VA to hire VAs?
Well, I mean, that's what my team do. We've been growing at a really fast rate, and our team almost doubles. Our VA team almost doubles every year, and I don't do any of the hiring at the moment. So we've got set processes. I've got amazing team members who just, they're just my leadership team based in the Philippines, and they do all the hiring. They run the entire process. So whilst we built the process together, they're so good at it now where they just do it for me, and we've got such an amazing team culture. My role is to make sure that the culture stays the same as we get bigger, and their job is to make sure that we bring in people who can adapt easily to our culture. So it's already like that. I don't do any of the hiring based in the Philippines. We bring people on, and sometimes I'll turn up on the Monday morning and be like, hey, we've got 3 new team members. I'm like, awesome. So that's already happening.
So interesting. And we might get you back at some point to talk about how to, communicate a company culture with a team that's entirely remote, because that's such a challenge that I'm sure that a lot of businesses have tried to face, whether through the pandemic or now. in a new world where your entire team can be remote. But look, Will, we're out of time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you all for watching as well. That's the end of another Vervoe webinar. We'll be sending you a recording of this session later today, so keep an eye out for it in your email. And do join us for our next webinar in a couple of weeks. It'll be on how to use skills-based hiring for all roles, from apprentices to COOs, where we'll welcome entrepreneur and best-selling author Andy Seth from Flow and Apprentice. That'll be on Thursday, July 21 at 8 a.m. That's Australian Eastern Standard Time, or it's Wednesday, July 20 at 6 p.m. Eastern, or 3 p.m. Pacific. Will, thanks again, and we'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye, everyone.